What if I told you one of America's deadliest disasters wasn't caused by fire, war, or an earthquake, but by a giant wave of molasses?
It sounds impossible, but in 1919, an entire Boston neighborhood was overwhelmed in just seconds.
Imagine standing on a quiet street, then watching a 25-foot wave racing straight toward you. Would you survive? Today, we're uncovering one of the strangest and most forgotten disasters in American history, the Great Molasses Flood. Let's travel back to Boston, January 15th, 1919, where a single engineering failure changed history forever.
The day a wave of molasses destroyed a city. January 15th, 1919, Boston, Massachusetts. Imagine stepping outside on a cold winter morning. The icy air is beginning to warm as the sun climbs over the rooftops. Horse-drawn wagons rattle along the streets. Factory workers hurry to their shifts. Children laugh as they make their way home from school. To everyone in Boston's North End, it feels like just another ordinary day. But towering above the neighborhood stands a massive steel tank. Nearly 50 feet tall, it holds more than 2.3 million gallons of molasses, a thick, dark syrup that most people would never imagine could become deadly. Within minutes, that tank will unleash one of the strangest and most devastating industrial disasters in American history. The most shocking part? This tragedy didn't come out of nowhere. The warning signs had been there for months. People simply ignored them. At the end of World War I, molasses was an incredibly valuable commodity. It wasn't just used for baking or sweetening food. It was a key ingredient in producing industrial alcohol, which was in high demand during and after the war. To keep up with production, a giant storage tank was built in Boston's busy North End, surrounded by homes, businesses, and crowded streets. Day after day, shipments of molasses arrived by rail and were pumped into the enormous steel container before being distributed to nearby factories. From a distance, the tank looked solid and dependable, but appearances can be dangerously misleading. Residents had noticed something unusual almost from the beginning. Molasses regularly leaked through cracks in the steel. Thick brown syrup dripped down the sides of the tank and pooled along the ground. Neighborhood children would sometimes collect the sweet liquid in small cans and bring it home. To them, it was a harmless treat. To the adults, it was something far more troubling. Late at night, neighbors often heard strange metallic groans echoing through the neighborhood. The tank seemed to creak and strain under enormous pressure, as if the steel itself were warning that something was terribly wrong. Concerned residents complained. Some urged the company to inspect the structure. Others questioned how a storage tank of that size could leak so badly without being repaired. But no major repairs were ever made. Instead, the company painted the tank a darker brown, making the leaking molasses stains much harder to see. The problem wasn't solved, it was simply hidden. Then came the morning of January 15th, 1919. Boston had endured several days of bitter cold, but suddenly temperatures rose dramatically. Just before the weather changed, a fresh shipment of warm molasses had been pumped into the tank. Inside, pressure began building rapidly. Outside, life carried on as usual. A dock worker focused on his job. A mother crossed the street carrying groceries. Children laughed together as they walked home. No one realized that the massive steel wall towering above them was only moments from catastrophic failure. Shortly after noon, a deafening blast shattered the afternoon. For an instant, people thought an explosion had ripped through the neighborhood. Then came the terrifying sound of steel tearing apart. 1 second, 2 seconds, the enormous tank exploded from within. Massive steel plates were hurled high into the air like pieces of paper. And then, something unimaginable came racing through the streets. Not a tidal wave, not a flood of water, but a towering wall of thick, dark, sticky molasses. How powerful was that wave? Why couldn't people simply run to safety? And how did an ordinary workday turn into one of America's most unbelievable disasters in just a matter of seconds? That's where our story continues. The day a wave of molasses destroyed a city. Within seconds, the towering wall of dark syrup swallowed the streets. More than 2.3 million gallons of molasses burst from the shattered tank with explosive force. The massive wave surged through Boston's North End, smashing into buildings, horse-drawn wagons, wooden homes, and everyone in its path. People were thrown to the ground before they even understood what was happening. Many believed an earthquake had struck. Others thought a bomb had exploded. But when they looked around, they saw nothing but a sea of thick, dark, sticky molasses. People tried desperately to run, but every step only pulled them deeper into the syrup. The harder they struggled, the more trapped they became. Some reached for windows, but never made it. Others clung to broken pieces of wood, hoping to stay above the rising flood. Terrified horses fought to escape, only to become hopelessly stuck. The neighborhood echoed with desperate cries for help. Within minutes, news of the disaster spread across Boston. Police officers, firefighters, U.S. Navy personnel, and ordinary citizens rushed to the scene, yet nothing could have prepared them for what they found. This was no ordinary rescue. The molasses had become so thick that every step trapped their boots. Rescuers struggled to move through the sticky flood. Pulling a single victim to safety often required several people working together. Ropes were lowered, wooden planks were laid across the ground, and rescuers risked their own lives to reach those still trapped beneath the syrup and debris. The bitter winter air made the situation even worse. As the temperature dropped, the molasses became colder, thicker, and even more difficult to move through. Rescue efforts continued for hours. Some victims were pulled out alive. Many others never made it home. Official records show that 21 people lost their lives, while around 150 others were injured. But numbers alone cannot measure the heartbreak left behind. Families lost fathers, mothers, sons, and friends in a matter of seconds. Survivors carried the memory of that terrifying day and the sound of the tank exploding for the rest of their lives. When the rescue ended, another battle began. The search for the truth. Investigators carefully examined the remains of the enormous steel tank. What they discovered was shocking. The structure had never been properly engineered or thoroughly tested. In several places, the steel walls were thinner than they should have been. Residents had reported leaks for years, but those warnings had largely been ignored. Instead of repairing the tank, the company had simply painted it a darker color to hide the stains. The disaster had not been unavoidable. It had been preventable. After years of legal battles, the court ruled in favor of the victims and their families. The company was held responsible and ordered to pay compensation. The case became one of the most significant engineering and public safety lawsuits in American history, helping establish stricter building inspections, engineering standards, and safety regulations for large industrial structures across the United States. Today, the giant steel tank is gone. In Boston's North End, a simple historical marker now stands where the disaster unfolded. Thousands of people pass by it every year, many unaware that this quiet street was once the scene of one of America's strangest industrial catastrophes. It is almost impossible to imagine. A sweet syrup used in kitchens and factories became the force behind one of the most unforgettable disasters in American history.
The Great Molasses Flood reminds us that history's greatest tragedies are not always caused by wars, earthquakes, or hurricanes. Sometimes they begin with a warning that nobody takes seriously. And in January 1919, one ignored warning changed an entire neighborhood.